Well, hello, and welcome to Tips and Tools for Sunday School, where we're training teachers, building programs for life transformation. I'm your host, Coach Patti. I'm so glad to be back with you. And today we are going to do a little training. I haven't done some training in quite a bit, but I wanted to come back. I did a little reel, just kind of testing some things out, and I was talking about sticky stories. And people have reached out and said, I thought you were going to come back with that. And I said, I was, but I really am going to talk about that. We're going to talk about stories that stick, or sticky stories. And it's so important. I've been a Sunday school teacher for more years than I really want to say on this live, right? And I've been a Sunday school superintendent. I've worked at the district level, at the state level, even at the national and international level of working with teachers. And last year's theme was the year of the communicator, and we were helping people make sure that they were clear, they were concise, and that they knew how to get the information out. So I've taught for a long time, and I want you to kind of understand. Sometimes you can have the information, you can tell the lesson, and it just don't land, right? And I've been in classes, I've been in workshops, this is in churches and this is at work, and it's just not connecting. And it's not that the people don't have the content. And I really believe our Sunday school teachers, I know we have the content. We've studied, we've done what we've had to do, but the lessons aren't just landing. People say you're boring. Nobody wants to come to your class. You wonder, I can't build. Nobody's coming back to church. Nobody's logging on to the Zoom. Well, guess what? If the lessons aren't landing, they're not coming, right? Lessons that last impact lifestyles. Remember this. If they can't feel it, they won't remember it. And if they can't remember it, they're not going to be able to live it. They're not going to be able to apply it, right? So you have to make them feel it. They have to find a way to connect with the lesson. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. A quick overview of stories that stick. Now, listen, this is a book by Kendra Hall. So we're going to use this information, okay? We have to always perfect our craft. You have to perfect your craft. There are ways to tell stories. There's ways to get information out. So this year, I have dubbed this year the year of the storyteller. This is going to be the year we do training for our teachers to help them tell stories that stick, that connect, that engage, and that ultimately transform lives. So we're going to talk about sticky stories. As I said, we're going to talk about sticky stories from the book from Kendra Hall. And we're going to talk about what she calls are the four main components to a sticky story. Now, listen, sometimes this will help you. This will help you if you're teaching, if you're preaching, if you're being a facilitator, you're a workshop presenter, you have to do a persuasive speech, you're selling, you're at an office meeting, and you have to talk about a policy, you have to talk about some major change. These are skills that will help you in ministry and in marketplace. You have to be able to tell a story that connects with the audience. Remember, if they don't feel it, they won't remember it. And if they can't remember it, they can't live it, they can't apply it. All right? So let's remember that. So the first thing she talks about is an identifiable character. A story needs a person or a small number of people at its center. This character should be someone your audience can easily picture and think that's me, or I know someone like that. We do not want Superman. We don't want we don't want a hero. We want a relatable human being who has a clear want, who has a clear challenge in a specific situation, right? This might be anybody that you can use that will connect with the audience. It's somebody they can emotionally attach to that character's experience, right? So you have to have identifiable character. Now, for Bible study teachers, Sunday school teachers, we already have the story and we already have the characters, right? So you have to decide who's the character that you want your class to connect with. The next thing is you have to have authentic emotion. Remember, if they can't feel it, they won't remember it. So you have to have a character that has some sort of feeling inside the story. So it's not about your class having the feeling. It's about the character having some sort of feeling that's happening in that particular story. Fear, hope, disappointment, challenge, pain. They have to have some sort of emotion in that story, and it has to be authentic, okay? It's the character's experience that you have to tell. And when you tell that character's experience and you say, this is how the character feels, then your audience, your class, your students can connect with that emotion. All right? Authentic emotion is usually shown through small, concrete signals. Okay? You have to tell the story in a way that conveys the specific emotion you want that character to feel and you want your class to connect with. All right. Without this emotional connection throughout the story is just flat. Okay. The listener has no real stake, has no real interest in listening to what you have to tell if you don't have an identifiable character and there's no authentic emotion that particular character is feeling. All right. Number 3, there has to be a significant moment, right? You guys know, we learned this in school. It has to be a climax. There has to be a significant point in the story that changes the story from before to after, right? There's that one single moment when everything changes, right? Or when it could possibly change. So there has to be a significant moment in the story, all right? It has to be a clear before and after. That's the significant moment. So you want to talk about the character, you want to show the emotion, you want to present the challenge, present the conflict, and then there's a moment. There's a moment that something changes. Does it change for good? Does it change for bad? What happens, right? There's a before and there's an after. There has to be a significant moment in the story, okay? The audience has to clearly see what's at stake and how the outcome matters in real life or in business, right? If you're presenting a new policy, they have to understand, how does this policy impact our operations? How does it impact our customer? When you're telling a Bible story, you have to tell them, how does this Bible story impact their life? What is the lesson for me to learn, right? It has to be a significant moment. And lastly, when you tell a story, you got to have specific details. You have to have details that bring the story to life, right? You have to make them see it. You have to make them feel it. You have to make them smell it. You have to make them hear it, right? You have to engage all of the senses for specific details. So when you tell the story, you have to tell the story in a way that they can feel the details and they can connect and even feel like maybe they're a part of the story. It's very important that you give specific details. Not only that, it makes the story comes to life. It makes the story more believable, right? And the details that you choose. Now, this is the difference in a good storyteller. The details that you choose to tell should be something that relates to your audience, right? So if you're telling a story, and I'm going to tell you a story in a few minutes. If you're telling a story to adults, those details have to relate to adults. If you're telling stories to teenagers, those details have to be details that resonate with them. If you're telling them to primaries or children, has to be details that resonate, that they can connect with. All right. So that's the key, right? That's the key with the specific details. It's not just telling a bunch of stuff, but the stuff that you tell has to connect to your audience. All right. So the people feel like they're actually there in the room. All right. That is how we must tell the story. So remember, for a sticky story, we got to have identifiable character, authentic emotion, a significant moment, and specific details. That is what makes a sticky story. So now I'm going to tell a story. And when we get through the story, I want you to tell me who's the character, what's the emotion, what's the significant moment, and what are some of the specific details. All right, we ready? Here's the story. The crowd had been following Jesus all day. They were hot. They were sticky. By evening, the hills near the sea were covered with thousands of people sitting on the grass, tired and hungry. Andrew had already noticed the problem before anyone else said a word. Somebody muttered, "We don't have enough food." But that was when this little boy stepped forward. He was holding his lunch in both hands. He had 5 small loaves and 2 small fish. It wasn't much, barely enough for him, let alone a crowd of thousands. This boy looked small, standing there in the middle of all of these adults with just his little lunch. His lunch was ordinary. There was nothing special about it, but he wanted to give it to Jesus. Jesus took his lunch. He didn't compare it to the fact that it couldn't possibly feed these thousands of people. Jesus simply received it, blessed it, and began to break it apart. And then something amazing happened. The food kept going. They kept breaking it apart, kept moving the fish, and it just kept going. Person after person, 50, 100, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 men all were able to eat as Jesus just continued to break apart the small boy's lunch. And they kept going until everybody was fed. 5,000 men and who knows how many women and children. And in the end, the disciples gathered 12 baskets of food. The boy's lunch, what didn't seem like much at first, became enough in Jesus' hand. And that evening, that little boy went home. His heart was full because he offered the little that he had, and Jesus had turned it into more than he could possibly imagine. All right, that was our story, okay? That was our story. Do you recognize that story? All right, if you recognize that story, put it in the chat. What is that Bible story, right? Now, I told a story, all right? So, who's the identifiable character in that story? Who's the identifiable character in that story? So I told the story so that the boy was the identifiable character, right? He was the one that stood out, okay? Now, you could have told the story from different perspectives, okay? So depending on the point that you want to make, you can pick the character in the story that will bring home the point you're trying to make, okay? But we chose at this particular point the identifiable character being the boy. All right. What was the authentic emotions? The authentic emotions, there was worry. There was worry. Like we've been following Jesus all day. They're tired, they're hungry, and we don't have enough food. The little boy felt insignificant. He was uncertain about, did his lunch make a difference, right? These are authentic emotions, right? We all understand what it means to be hungry, tired, hot, and hungry, right? They had followed Jesus all day, right? If you were telling a story in church, you can say, we was in church all day. We've been in Sunday school, morning worship, evening worship, and hadn't eaten a thing all day, right? We could identify with being insignificant. We have all been in situations that were bigger than us, and we felt insignificant. Maybe how do we help solve that problem, right? And being uncertain. This is what I have. Is this going to be enough? Right? So those were the authentic emotions in this story. What was the significant moment in this story? What was the significant moment? Remember, the significant moment is the before and after. What was the significant moment? Okay. Just drop it in the chat. The significant moment was when he gave his lunch to Jesus. That's the before. Because before, we didn't know what we were going to eat. We didn't know what was going to happen. But the after is, after Jesus got the lunch, he received it, he blessed it, he broke it, and they were able to feed 5,000 men, not including women and children. That's the significant moment of the story. Okay? Things changed. Things changed at that point once he gave it to Jesus. All right. Lastly, what are the specific details? There were lots of details, but these are the details. Now, I taught this lesson to an adult audience. And so what were some of the things that an adult audience might have connected with, right, as far as specific details? Okay. There was a crowd. They were out all day. There were only 5 loaves and 2 fish. It's a large crowd. We said that, right? Small boy, lunch, tired, grass, 12 baskets, right? These are specific details that could connect with your audience, but made the lesson, made it come alive, made it believable. They could actually see themselves in the lesson, right? They could see themselves out all day on the grass, tired, right? They could see this little boy with this little lunch, right? This Lunchable, right? They could see him with that, right? So this is how you have those specific details. All right. And so that is how you tell a sticky story. That caused people to listen. It caused people to pay attention. It caused you to say, oh my goodness, right? And so the moral of the lesson, what we want to teach is you don't know what you have until you give it to Jesus. And when you give it to Jesus, Jesus is able to take what you have and make it more. He can take what you have and solve the problems, right? So this is how you tell the story. That's the point we wanted to make. You could take that story and tell that story to children, to teenagers. You would just need to change the flow of the story, change some of the specific details, change kind of what you point out in the lesson, right? So if I was telling this lesson to children, I would say the crowd had been following Jesus all day, even this little boy. His mother had packed him a lunch and told him, take this lunch with you, stay with the crowd, and don't stay with the crowd, right? And it's just like when you leave from home every day and your mom gives you a lunch. You have your lunch to eat, but the lunch that your mother packed you was only for you. It wasn't enough for you to share with your friends. Well, this little boy was out in the crowd and everybody was hungry and nobody had any food. And he was the only one with his little lunch. He had to make a decision. Do I just keep my lunch? Or do I share my lunch so that maybe somebody else can eat the food along with me? I don't know how many people can eat off my lunch, but I'm willing to share. And he shared his lunch with Jesus. And Jesus was able to take his lunch and feed not just the little boy, but all of the crowd. They all were able to eat the lunch. How? Because Jesus prayed his grace over the food, and then he began to break the food, and the food just kept coming and coming and coming. Every time he moved a fish, there was another one. Every time he gave a loaf, there was another one. And they kept going till everybody ate. And when they finished and they were cleaning the tables, right? Because after you eat dinner, you got to clean the table. They had 12 baskets of food left from one little boy's lunch. He went home and he was happy. His heart was full because he shared his lunch. Now, how many of you would share your lunch in a situation like that? And when you have something to share, when you give what you have to Jesus, Jesus can take what you have and he can make it do whatever it needs to do. But we have to first have a heart to share what we have. Okay, see, that is how I would have told that story to a bunch of young people, right? Same details, but we pull out, we give different details to connect with that particular audience. Okay? I want you to be a great storyteller. I want you to teach so that you connect, so that you engage, so that there's transformation, so that it's memorable. Remember, if they don't feel it, they can't remember it. And if they don't remember it, they can't live it. They can't apply it. We have to become great storytellers. Jesus was a great storyteller. We have to teach like Jesus and be able to tell a great story. All right, well, that is my little lesson for today. I have developed a template for you based off stories that stick, based off a model. And this is a template that you can follow so that you are making sure you are telling a story that sticks. You are telling a story that people can feel, remember, and live. Okay? I need you to go to my website, www.pattyjohnson.org, sign up with your email address, and I will email you the template. Okay, free of charge, doesn't cost anything. We are here. We offer free resources here at Tips and Tools for Sunday School. Absolutely free template. Sign up on my website, and that way you'll be abreast of any other new trainings and things that we do here at pattyjohnson.org. All right. And if you have not subscribed to this page, hit the subscribe button right now. Look, like, and share this video and subscribe. Okay, this is the year of the storyteller. The year of the storyteller. And we want to make sure that every Bible teacher, workshop presenter, preacher, facilitator, whatever you're doing, you are able to tell an effective story. A story that connects, engages, and transforms. All right. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for joining us here at Tips and Tools for Sunday School. Remember, where we're training teachers and building programs for life transformation. And as always, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.